The seventh world champion Vassily Smyslov was famous as a positional player, but I would here like to show a game where he displayed his attacking skills. This game was played in 1983 against Zoltan Ribli in the candidates semi-finals. So after the d4 opening, we get the position with the isolated pawn, and here black plays bishop f6 to put some pressure on the d4 pawn, and white plays queen c2. So Smyslov wants to create the pressure on the king side and force black to weaken it either by playing g6 or h6, and this is a very typical play for white in this kind of positions. So black decided to play h6 and protect the pawn this way. Had he played g6, he would have kept the diagonal kind of closed, but this would have allowed white to develop the bishop with tempo with bishop h6, and this is also leading to complicated play where white has some attacking chances on the dark squares, I suppose. So black played h6, and now the theme for this kind of position is to exploit the weakening of the light squares. So ideally white would like to regroup his pieces, basically switch the queen and the bishop around so that the queen is ahead of the bishop, and then try to give checkmate on the long diagonal, on this diagonal. But of course it takes time, and in the meantime black is already attacking the pawn on d4 with the knight and with the bishop. So Smyslov tries to protect the pawn, so he goes with d1. The pawn is protected indirectly now. Black increases the pressure on the d4 pawn with queen b6, and now white plays bishop c4. The idea of this move is to increase the pressure on d5, but also to open up the way for the rook to protect d4. Rook d8. At the moment it was a bit dangerous to take the pawn on d4. For example, knight d4, takes, and now the queen and the bishop are a bit awkwardly placed, so knight a4 attacks the queen. And if black hopes to exploit the pin, then white has a tactical shot. Bishop h6 takes there, and the queen escapes from the pin and attacks on h6 at the same time. So white's probably going to win here. So that's why it was dangerous to take on d4. Instead black played rook d8. White has to defend on d4. And now finally black moves his last minor piece, the bishop, and now he's ready to play rook c8 and start to play on the c file. And basically black is going to put pressure on white's weaknesses on d4 and b2, and it's not really clear where white is going with the attack here. But of course Smyslov tries to generate some pressure, so he goes queen e4, and now he wants to go bishop d3, knight c7, bishop d3 as planned, and here white doesn't threaten checkmate, he just threatens to invade on h6, on h7, and Ribli decided that this wasn't very dangerous, so he neglected that threat. He could have just played here something like knight g6, and he would be quite solid. He has enough time to play something like bishop b5 later. For example, if h4, then bishop b5, and he's basically creating enough counterattack against this battery of pieces. Instead, Ribli played the wrong move. He played bishop to a4, and this attacks the rook, but the rook wants to go to e1 anyway, so after the check the rook now comes to the e file, and it will be creating a lot of interesting pressure on this file, as we'll see. Black insists on the exchange of bishops, but here this isn't working as well for black as in the previous line, because here the queen has already managed to invade on h7, and even though the king isn't getting mated, there are all kinds of sacrifices that are in the air now. Like bishop h6 is one. So here it's okay for white to trade, and now he starts to bring up the pieces towards the king side. Maybe knight h5, knight to e5, knight to g5 maybe even, and as I mentioned, bishop takes h6 is a threat as well. So even though black is dominating the queen side and the center, on the king side he doesn't have enough defenders, and Smyslov correctly judged that he will have enough pressure on the king side to cause harm to the black king. Knight g6. It's now good to take this knight. Basically black's king side is then going to be devastated. So instead he protects the knight on g6, and this also opens up the way for the rook. But here comes the sacrifice. Bishop takes h6. So Ribli tried to capture on e5, and here comes the second sacrifice. So white has all the pieces hanging up here, but because of the bad position of the black king, they really cannot be taken. For example, if he now takes on h6, then it's going to end very badly for black, and the king is getting checkmated. So in this position, the g7 square is really crumbling, and black cannot do anything to protect it. Sorry, g7 square is crumbling, and black tried to give up the piece back with knight f3, and he tried to create the escape square for the king to e7. Takes and takes, and seems like black is here maintaining the balance because he hasn't really lost too much material. He's still having the pressure against these pawns, and his king seems to have escaped. If say queen h8, then just king e7. Smyslov has foreseen this, and he realized that he could open up the center with d5, and this really means that now there's no way for black to capture this pawn in a convenient manner. So say if he goes something like e takes, well, that's just the end. It's just going to be mate. So he can't really take this pawn in a convenient way. So instead he tried to create some counterattack and instead bring the queen into the game. So now this also threatens queen to f6. But it turns out that this falls just short. e7. And now Smyslov found another beautiful sacrifice. He realized that because of this diagonal on which both queens are, because this diagonal may open up in a certain line, he manages to take advantage of this factor. And the sacrifice he found now is rook e6, capturing forced, and now the queen takes on d7, and now if say king to d6, then a simple knight e4 is going to be a discovered check, a discovered attack, and the queen is going to take on b2. So black had to block the attack, and now if knight to g8, then of course rook g8, and the queen is pinned. So that doesn't work, but what does work is d6, and now this frees up the d5 square for the knight, and now basically no matter what, white is going to win the queen. So rook d6 there. After queen b2, Smyslov won the queen, and he has a huge material advantage, and he managed to win this game in the end, and he's winning here. So this game showed that Smyslov was really good at sharp attacking positions, not just in calm situations.